Wow, that was quite an episode of The Bachelorette. Bachelorette episode 3. I'm calling it Triggered because Claire was triggered in the episode. If you're joining me from the Brutally Honest recap, thanks for joining me. If you're just finding this and watching it, you might want to watch the Brutally Honest recap first. I'll link it in the description. So let's talk about this episode. Wow, it's really incredible. You know, Andy Dorfman once said to Juan Pablo, "It's not okay." And yeah, that's what I want to say about this episode. It is not okay. We might have known that this might happen. I think a lot of us were excited about the prospect of Claire being 39 years old and that she might bring a more mature experience to a bachelorette program that increasingly has been about Instagram fame and not so much about romance. And it seems instead we've gotten what seems to be, at least so far, you know, maybe things can turn around, but Claire is actually probably the most immature bachelorette that we've seen. And this may be the most immature series of anything in the Bachelor franchise history. We might have known this because when she was with Juan Pablo in her appearance on The Bachelor, Juan Pablo had the nerve, you know, not to choose her. I understand that that can be kind of maybe a cruel feeling experience when you make it all the way through it and ultimately you're not chosen. However, he was a little rough with her, yes, you know, in what he said. Did he really wrong her in any way? I don't know that there's really evidence for that. I don't think so. And she turned that moment into something about her, where she remarks, you know, I wouldn't want you to be the father of my children. She's parlayed that whole thing into kind of a little Bachelor universe career for herself. And so if anybody had gone back and watched that, any of these contestants, they might have known that whenever something seems to be turned on Claire, she makes it kind of somebody else's fault. So Juan Pablo didn't choose her. He's free not to choose her. She turned that on Juan Pablo. In this episode, Yosef is the only one who stands up for anyone, pointing out that it's a major red flag the way that she treated everyone on the first group date when she said, "Hey, why isn't everybody wanting to talk to me?" Essentially, she's in love with Dale, and every time that she has to eliminate somebody else, she's going to make it about them and it being their fault. I don't think it's really their fault in any case. I'm going to go back to Claire's own words that she said to Juan Pablo. She said, "What you just put me through, I wouldn't want you to be the father of my children." So let's focus on that part of the statement, what you just put me through. So these guys in the middle of a pandemic have gone all the way to the La Quinta resort to try and date Claire, and this is how they're being treated. So what are they being put through? They're being put through her immediately latching onto Dale, not going through the proper process as outlined by the Bachelorette, the proper Bachelorette process. She's canceling a lot of the dates. She's not following through. And then when different things happen, she turns it on the men. So for example, now we did have kind of an unusual happening with, I'll call it kind of the Kissgate portion with Zach, where Zach leans in for a kiss, something awkward happens, they don't kiss. He then awkwardly does get out of the pool and he kind of grabs her neck a little bit and it is uncomfortable. She says she's triggered by it. She may be. I did feel a little bit uncomfortable about it too. But then She leaves him to go sit waiting for her at dinner. She doesn't show up. She sends Chris Harrison in instead to tell Zach that he's off the show. Now, we can debate whether or not he acted inappropriately. I think he did a little bit, maybe even a lot. But perhaps she could have told him this in person and they could have either reached an understanding, or she could have just gone ahead and let him go. But to just leave him there at dinner didn't seem like the most mature. I don't know that it's likely that she was really triggered. It seems like maybe she was just trying to find an excuse to let him go. Same thing with the group date at the roast. She immaturely asks everyone, what did Dale say about me? What about Dale? What about Dale? What about Dale? And then when that's all over, she comes out to everybody who's waiting for her, and she's got a group date rose to give out, and she says, I didn't really get what I wanted from this, so I'm not going to give out the group date rose. So again, she turns it on them and makes it as though it's their fault, and then awards the group date rose to herself. Meanwhile, she makes some comment about Dale being her fiance. So over and over again, these men who most of them seem pretty well-meaning are treated very poorly. What are they being put through? So I just want to say, if you are being treated like this by someone, I'm very sorry that's happened to you. Please forgive yourself. You probably didn't know that this was going to happen. A lot of times, though, people do reveal themselves kind of at the beginning, and I think we kind of might have known this about Clare if we really looked seriously at the Juan Pablo episode. I do have a video on that. I'll link that in the description. So forgive yourself. Take a little bit of responsibility for not being a little bit more like Yosef, who stood up for himself. He did kind of get out of control. He did lose his cool. It's a pressure-filled situation. I don't agree with the way that he handled it, but I do agree with the fact that he stood up for himself. Resolve to learn from it. Don't let yourself be treated like this again. If you have been treated this way, do get some rest, do exercise, do socialize, and ultimately you're going to have a lot of thoughts about what you could have done differently. I'm sure Zach is going to have a lot of thoughts about what he could have done differently with the Kissgate incident. I'm sure he probably feels terrible and humiliated in front of all of America. He didn't act the best, but I don't know that he truly deserves that treatment, or to feel probably as bad about himself as he probably does. And if you are feeling that way and going over and over your own actions, that's normal and that's healthy, but don't share those ruminations or thoughts in most cases with the person who has made you feel so horrible about what you did that really might not have been that bad or even bad at all. So that's my thoughts on this episode of The Bachelorette. It really was just awfully uncomfortable to watch. I just don't know what else to say. I do, however, appreciate you taking a look at this, and let's hope that we see better things from the Bachelor universe with Tayshia as the Bachelorette.